Being nice feels right until you start noticing how people respond to you. In the beginning, everything looks fine. You're polite, you're patient, you try to maintain harmony, you tell yourself this is maturity, this is strength. But then something changes. People interrupt you, they stretch your limits, they expect more while giving less, and slowly your kindness stops being appreciated and starts being taken advantage of. Here's the uncomfortable truth people rarely admit. You're not losing respect because you're a bad person. You're losing it because niceness has replaced something essential, self-respect. Stoic philosophy was never about pleasing others or keeping everyone comfortable. It was about inner authority, firm boundaries, and a calm strength that doesn't seek approval. In this video, you'll see why being nice often backfires, not all at once, but gradually, quietly, predictably, and more importantly, you'll learn the Stoic alternative, how to remain calm, steady, and respected without becoming cold, aggressive, or bitter. If you've ever felt ignored, underestimated, or taken for granted, this is where the pattern finally reveals itself. 1. Being nice isn't kindness, it's avoidance. Being nice is often praised as a virtue, but most of the time it isn't kindness at all. It's avoidance. You're not choosing goodness, you're choosing the safest option available. You stay agreeable because you don't want tension. You stay polite because you don't want conflict. You stay silent because you don't want to risk being misunderstood, disliked, or rejected. That isn't strength. That's fear wearing a friendly mask. Real kindness comes from clarity and choice. Niceness comes from anxiety and habit. You don't say yes because you believe in it. You say yes because saying no feels uncomfortable. You don't explain yourself because it's necessary. You explain yourself because you're afraid of how others might judge you if you don't. And people sense this, even if they can't articulate it. Humans are extremely sensitive to motivation. They can tell when your behavior comes from inner authority and when it's driven by fear of disapproval. When fear fuels your actions, your position weakens, not dramatically, not instantly, but steadily. This is why being nice slowly erodes respect. Respect isn't given to people who avoid discomfort. It's given to people who can tolerate it. Stoic philosophy understood this long before modern psychology. Anything rooted in fear creates dependence. Anything rooted in dependence creates predictability, and predictability invites control. When people realize you'll always smooth things over, always explain, always forgive, always accommodate, they stop adjusting themselves around you. Why would they? You've already shown them that you will. This doesn't make you immoral, it makes you exposed. And the more this pattern repeats, the more it becomes your identity. You're no longer seen as calm, you're seen as safe to ignore. You're no longer seen as kind, you're seen as easy to bypass. This is the trap, because once niceness becomes automatic, it stops being a choice. And anything that isn't a choice isn't respected. Stoics never confused virtue with comfort. They believed virtue required friction, inner friction especially, the ability to sit with discomfort without collapsing into people-pleasing. They knew that when your behavior is shaped by the desire to be liked, your life becomes shaped by other people's expectations, and once that happens, respect has nowhere to stand. That's why being nice feels harmless at first, but costly over time. You're not being punished for being good, you're being tested for being afraid. And every time you choose niceness over clarity, you answer that test the same way, quietly, predictably, at your own expense. This isn't about becoming rude, cold, or aggressive. It's about reclaiming authorship over your behavior, because the moment you stop acting from fear, people feel it. And when fear leaves your actions, respect has room to return. 2. Respect begins where approval ends. The moment you prioritize being liked, you place yourself in a losing position. Not because people are cruel, but because approval and respect rarely coexist. Approval asks, "Do you accept me?" Respect states, "This is who I am." Those energies move in opposite directions. When your decisions are shaped by how others might react, you surrender authority over your own behavior. You hesitate before speaking. You soften your stance. You adjust your tone, not because it's right, but because you want to be received well. And people notice. Respect doesn't grow where everything is negotiable. It grows where there are edges, limits, lines that don't move just because someone feels uncomfortable. Many people believe boundaries create distance. In reality, the absence of boundaries does. When you never push back, people stop monitoring themselves around you. They interrupt more. They assume access. They take liberties they wouldn't take with someone firmer, not out of malice, but adaptation. Human beings constantly test for structure. They observe what's allowed, what's tolerated, and what goes unanswered. When approval becomes the priority, structure collapses, and without structure, respect has nothing to attach itself to. Stoic philosophy never framed life as a popularity contest. It framed it as a discipline of self-governance. If you can't govern your reactions, your boundaries, your standards, someone else will. Seeking approval is a form of outsourcing judgment. You hand your internal compass to the room and wait to see which way it points. That's why approval feels good in the moment, but hollow over time. It costs you something subtle but important: position. Respect, on the other hand, often arrives quietly. It doesn't flatter, it doesn't reassure, it shows up as restraint. People choose their words more carefully. They pause before crossing lines. They adjust their behavior without you needing to ask. And none of this happens because you demanded it. It happens because you stopped negotiating your standards. Stoics understood this paradox well. You don't earn respect by chasing it. You earn it by refusing to trade yourself for acceptance. The more you seek approval, the less solid you appear. And the less solid you appear, the less weight your presence carries. Approval is expensive. Respect only appears when you stop paying that price. When you choose clarity over comfort, when you let people sit with their reactions instead of rescuing them, you send a quiet signal. I don't need permission to be who I am. And once that signal is sent, the dynamic changes, not because you became harsher, but because you became anchored. That's where respect begins. 3. Over-explaining is a low-status signal. The moment you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. That impulse rarely comes from clarity. It comes from discomfort. You explain because the room feels tense. You explain because someone looks unconvinced. You explain because silence feels like judgment. So you rush to fill it. You add context. You justify your decision. You soften your words. You hope that if they understand you better, they'll accept what you chose. But something subtle happens when you do this. You shift positions. Instead of standing in your decision, you step beneath it. Instead of acting from authority, you ask for permission after the fact. Over-explaining doesn't make you clearer. It makes you smaller. People with solid internal footing don't narrate their reasoning to be validated. They state their position, they decide, and they move on. That doesn't make them arrogant. It means they trust their judgment enough to allow others to react however they will. Every unnecessary explanation sends the same quiet signal. I'm not fully at ease with this unless you approve. And people hear that even if nothing is said out loud. The more you explain, the more you invite evaluation. The more you invite evaluation, the more control you hand over. Now the discussion isn't about your decision anymore. It's about whether your decision deserves to stand. That's a low-position dynamic. Stoics understood the power of restraint in speech, not silence as withdrawal, but silence as self-respect. They knew that not every reaction deserves a response, and not every decision requires a defense. When you explain yourself to people who were never entitled to an explanation, you blur the line between confidence and compliance. And once that line blurs, people begin to press it. They question more, they probe deeper, they challenge things they wouldn't challenge with someone firmer, not because they want to dominate you, but because you've shown them the door is open. This is why calm, grounded individuals speak less, not more. They don't rush to fill gaps with words. They let space do the work, because space reveals something important. Those who respect you don't need explanations. Those who don't respect you won't be satisfied by them anyway. So the next time you feel the pull to justify yourself, ask one simple question. Am I explaining to inform or to be accepted? If it's the second, stop. Let the silence remain. Let the discomfort exist. Let people adjust to the reality that you don't need to be understood in order to be solid. That isn't cold, that's grounded. And grounded people don't talk themselves into respect. 4. Disrespect is learned, not accidental. People don't suddenly wake up one day and decide to disrespect you. It doesn't happen in a single moment. It forms through repetition, through patterns you allow to develop. Disrespect is learned the same way any behavior is learned, through what goes unchallenged. The first time someone interrupts you, you let it pass. The first time they cross a boundary, you stay quiet. The first time they take more than they give, you tell yourself it's not worth making an issue out of. Individually, these moments feel small, forgettable, insignificant. Together, they create a lesson. Every time you absorb behavior without responding, you teach people what's acceptable around you, not with words, but with tolerance. Stoics were clear about this. What you tolerate becomes the standard. You may think you're being patient, you may think you're being understanding. But from the outside, something else is communicated. That your limits are flexible, your time is negotiable, and your presence doesn't require consideration. Once people learn that, they adjust their behavior accordingly, not because they're bad, but because humans adapt to structure. When a line holds firm, it's respected. When it moves every time pressure is applied, it gets tested again. This is how disrespect escalates. It starts small, because small things are easy to ignore. Then it grows because nothing stops it. By the time you finally feel fed up, the dynamic is already established. Pushing back now feels awkward, unnatural, like you're changing the rules midstream. But the truth is, the rules were never set in the first place. Stoic philosophy doesn't frame this as blame. It frames it as responsibility, not responsibility for how others behave, but responsibility for what you allow to become normal. When you consistently accept less than what you deserve, people don't feel guilty benefiting from it. They assume it's the arrangement, and the longer it continues, the harder it becomes to reverse. That's why respect isn't something you demand later. It's something you establish early, not loudly, not aggressively, but clearly. The moment you stop absorbing disrespect in silence, the lesson changes. People either adjust or remove themselves. Both outcomes are information, and both restore something essential that niceness quietly erodes. Respect isn't lost in dramatic confrontations. It's lost in the quiet moments you convinced yourself didn't matter. Stoics paid attention to those moments because they knew that's where everything is decided. 5. Being nice makes you safe, not valued. There's a difference most people never recognize, the difference between being safe and being valued. Being nice makes people feel safe around you. They know you won't challenge them. They know you won't push back. They know you won't walk away easily, and that safety feels good for them. But safety is not what creates respect. When people feel too comfortable, they stop being careful. They speak without thinking. They assume access to your time, your energy, your attention. They take liberties they wouldn't take with someone more grounded, not because they want to hurt you, but because there's no cost. Niceness removes friction, and friction is what signals value. Think about it clearly. What do people protect more? Things that are easy to access or things that require intention? Value is tied to scarcity, to standards, to the possibility of loss. When you're always available, always accommodating, always understanding, you remove that possibility. People don't worry about losing your presence. They assume it. That's why being nice so often leads to being taken for granted. Not immediately, but eventually. Stoic philosophy never encouraged being harmless. It encouraged being steady. A steady person doesn't chase. They don't beg. They don't overgive to secure a place. They show up consistently, but on their own terms. Niceness says, I'll adjust myself to keep things smooth. Value says, this is how I operate. Take it or leave it. One looks for acceptance, the other earns respect. And here's the uncomfortable part. When people feel completely safe around you, they stop investing. They stop monitoring their tone. They stop considering your boundaries. They stop treating your presence as something that could be lost. Why would they? You've never shown them that it could be. This doesn't mean becoming threatening, it means becoming selective. You stop proving your worth through tolerance. You stop earning connection through self-erasure. Stoics understood that value comes from alignment, not accommodation, from being grounded enough to stand without approval. When you stop trying to be safe for everyone, something shifts. People either rise to meet your standards or quietly fall away. And that isn't loss, that's clarity, because the moment you choose value over safety, respect finally has something to hold on to. 6. The Stoic alternative: calm, firm, detached. The answer isn't becoming harsh, it isn't becoming distant, and it's definitely not swinging from nice to aggressive. That's just another loss of control. Stoicism offers something far more effective: calm authority. Calm means you don't react emotionally, you don't rush to defend, you don't match intensity with intensity. Firm means your boundaries don't move once they're set. You don't keep explaining them. You don't renegotiate them when someone feels uncomfortable. Detached means you're no longer emotionally dependent on how others respond. You don't need approval to stay grounded. You don't need agreement to remain steady. This combination changes everything. When you're calm, people can't provoke you. When you're firm, people can't push you. When you're detached, people lose leverage over you. Stoics understood that power doesn't come from domination. It comes from non-reactivity. A calm person forces others to regulate themselves. A firm person creates structure without raising their voice. A detached person removes emotional leverage from the room. This is why Stoic strength feels different. It's quiet, almost unimpressive on the surface, but deeply unsettling to anyone used to emotional access. You don't threaten, you don't warn, you don't announce boundaries. You simply stop participating when they're crossed. That's the key shift. Instead of arguing, you withdraw engagement. Instead of explaining, you reduce access. Instead of proving, you observe. And people notice. Not because you changed who you are, but because you changed your position. You're no longer trying to manage how others feel. You're managing how you respond. Stoics believed this was the highest form of control. Not control over others, but control over yourself. Once you master that, respect stops being something you chase. It becomes something people adjust to without drama, without force, without a single extra word. When you operate from calm, firm detachment, something subtle but important happens internally first. You stop needing to correct people. You stop needing to win moments. You stop needing immediate validation that you were right. This inner shift removes urgency from your behavior. Urgency is what gives others leverage, the need to be understood, the need to be acknowledged, the need to resolve tension quickly. When that urgency fades, manipulation loses its grip. People can only pressure you when you're in a hurry to ease discomfort. They can only provoke you when you're emotionally invested in their reaction. They can only cross lines when you feel responsible for their feelings. Detachment breaks all three. You begin to respond instead of react. You choose when to speak and when to remain silent. You allow pauses to exist without rushing to fill them. Those pauses are powerful. They force others to sit with uncertainty. They reveal who respects boundaries and who depends on your compliance. They expose motives that words often conceal. A Stoic understands that silence isn't withdrawal. It's observation. When someone pushes a boundary and you don't rush to explain yourself, they feel the shift immediately. The dynamic changes, not because you asserted dominance, but because you removed predictability. Predictability is what made you easy to manage before. Calm detachment makes you harder to read and harder to pressure. This is why Stoic firmness doesn't look aggressive. It looks uninterested in proving anything. You don't threaten consequences. You allow consequences to unfold naturally. You don't demand respect. You behave in a way that makes disrespect inconvenient. Over time, this reshapes how people interact with you. Some will rise to meet the new standard. They become more measured, more considerate, more intentional. Others will drift away. That isn't failure. That's filtration. Stoics never tried to keep everyone close. They cared about alignment, not approval. And alignment only becomes visible when you stop bending. This is the deeper purpose of calm, firm detachment. It doesn't just protect your peace. It reveals who belongs in your life and who only stayed when you were easy to manage. Once you see that clearly, you don't return to niceness out of fear. You choose steadiness out of strength. From that place, respect stops feeling fragile because it's no longer dependent on performance, but on how solid you stand. 7. When you stop trying to be liked, respect returns. There's a moment most people never reach. Not because it's complex, but because it's uncomfortable. It's the moment you stop trying. Not trying to impress, not trying to please, not trying to manage how others feel about you. Trying is exhausting and everyone can sense it. When you try to be liked, your behavior becomes reactive. You adjust to tone. You soften based on expressions. You recalibrate based on silence. Your presence stops being rooted in who you are and starts orbiting how others respond. That's when respect begins to slip. Respect isn't built on effort. It's built on stability. People respect what feels settled, what doesn't shift easily, what doesn't require constant reinforcement. The paradox is simple but uncomfortable. The more you want respect, the less likely you are to receive it. Wanting creates tension. Tension leaks need. Need invites leverage. When you stop trying to be liked, that entire chain breaks. You speak when there's something to say, not to be included. You set limits without rehearsing how they'll be received. You allow people to have their reactions without rushing to manage them. Slowly, the dynamic changes. People pause more around you. They choose their words more carefully. They stop assuming access, not because you demanded it, but because your behavior stopped signaling availability at any cost. This is where Stoic detachment shows its real power. Detachment isn't indifference, it's independence. You're no longer emotionally entangled with outcomes you don't control. You don't need agreement to stay centered. You don't need approval to remain steady. That steadiness is felt. It creates gravity. People are drawn to what feels complete, what doesn't need attention or reassurance to feel whole. When you stop trying to be liked, you also stop overgiving. You stop offering more than is asked. You stop compensating for silence, distance, or ambiguity. You let reciprocity reveal itself, and that's where clarity appears. Some people rise. They meet you with more respect, more presence, more care. They adjust because they sense the change. They realize access to you is no longer guaranteed. Others fade. They disengage. They lose interest once the emotional convenience disappears. That isn't rejection. That's information. Stoics understood that respect is selective by nature. It can't exist in dynamics built on dependency. When you stop trying to be liked, you remove dependency from the equation. You're no longer performing a role. You're no longer negotiating your worth. You're no longer explaining why you deserve consideration. You simply operate from self-respect. And self-respect is contagious. It teaches people how to treat you without a single conversation. It sets expectations without confrontation. It draws lines without aggression. That's why respect often returns quietly. There's no apology, no announcement, no dramatic reversal, just a subtle recalibration. People stop testing, they stop pushing, they stop assuming you'll always adapt. And you don't celebrate it because by then you no longer need it to feel solid. That's the final shift. Respect becomes a byproduct, not a goal. You're no longer chasing it. You're no longer guarding it anxiously. You're no longer afraid of losing it because it isn't propped up by effort. It's supported by alignment. Alignment between what you value, how you act, and what you tolerate. Stoic philosophy was built on this understanding. The strongest position is the one that doesn't need defending. The most respected presence is the one that doesn't ask to be respected. Power returns the moment you stop reaching for it. When you stop trying to be liked, you don't become invisible. You become grounded, and grounded people don't demand space. Space forms around them. That's when respect stops feeling fragile and starts feeling inevitable. Being nice was never the real problem. Losing yourself in the process was. Somewhere along the way, being agreeable replaced being grounded. Keeping the peace replaced holding your ground. And without noticing, you traded self-respect for approval, one small moment at a time. Stoic philosophy reminds us of a simple truth. You can't control how others behave, but you are always responsible for what you tolerate. Respect isn't something you demand later when frustration builds. It's something you establish early through clarity, consistency, and restraint. When you stop explaining yourself to be understood, when you stop softening your standards to be liked, when you stop absorbing discomfort just to avoid tension, something essential returns, not louder, not colder, just steadier. This is the Stoic choice, not isolation, not indifference, but inner authority, the ability to remain calm without becoming passive, firm without becoming aggressive, detached without becoming disconnected. When you respect yourself first, others no longer decide your value. They respond to it. Some will adjust, some will leave. Both outcomes are clarity. Respect can't coexist with fear, and it can't grow in a life shaped by the need for approval. The moment you stop trying to be liked, you stop shrinking to fit expectations that were never yours to begin with. From that place, quiet, grounded, unmoved, respect stops being something you chase. It becomes something that follows.